What's going on, Cancer? I salute the divinity in you, and welcome to the Chariot Friends. Justin here. How you feeling? That moon's feeling strong. She's at home, and you know what? It's gonna be a cool. This is gonna be an interesting one. I would say for sure because this where this moon is falling, Mars is involved. I've got some Mars and I got some beef. But yeah, this is gonna be an interesting one. I think this full moon, like this is a we'll talk about how this can go in a minute. This is a very time to dip into the feelings for sure. But before we get into that, if you are new here, again, welcome. My name is Justin, and know that when you come across this video, you're in sync with the moon, and she loves that. But also, this is a place for you happen to have Cancer in your placements, Sun, Moon, Rising, wherever. This one's for you. And I do tarot card spreads based on that lovely luminary, the good old moon. And I'll talk about what sign she's in, what phase she's in, when she's going void. Of course, it's all them lunar shenanigans, which she is going to go void, of course, this year. I got to look that up. And it's soon. And just so y'all aware, this is a general reading, not a one-to-one. So take what fits into your story, discard the rest, and everything will be dope, Cancer. Now, let's jump into it. Because, yes, this is going to be a pretty action-packed full moon, I would say. This lunation is going to be a pretty dope. It can go either way. You know, depending on if Mars is going to be a big factor when it comes into that. But before we get into that, I'm going to shuffle for your cards. Oh, and I got a chart for you, too, to pull up. And the Sabian symbol is actually really interesting. I got a lot to talk with you about. But happy Saturn Day, depending on when you're watching this. Saturn is, interestingly enough, associated with Saturday. Thanks, Spirit. And I find that Saturn days are really a great time for just getting things in order, just kind of for buckling things down. If you've not, and normally you would think like, you know, if you've been working like say like a Monday through Friday, Saturday's like your weekend, like woo, and it's like, well, you know, like maybe do the laundry, maybe catch up on some bills, get those things, and then we woo. We celebrate our accomplishments. But that's what I like to use Saturn days for, just a time to get some things in order. But that can be a really great time to, I think, if you're ever needing some kind of advice, that could be a great time if you're able to speak with any sort of like grandparents, if that's available to you, or anyone sort of like wise figure if you find yourself at one of those crossroads in life, or just looking for some guidance. I find that Saturn days can be a great time to just, or even during like Saturn hours, can be a great time because it brings this kind of more seriousness, this kind of somber, I don't know if it's somber, but kind of just more, yeah, just kind of more serious tone to the mix, but in the sense that like we're trying to get somewhere. We're thinking about some long-term plans here when we're talking with Saturn. And another thing too that I like doing with these days and hours is Saturn. You know, I will say for Saturn hours, those are the times where if I've been just kind of lollygagging a little bit, those are times where it's just like, no, you're right, Saturn. Let me go ahead and get myself together. But I also like to think of these days to, or, you know, more so the days, to just kind of reflect on what is my relationship with Saturn? How do I deal with Saturn transits? Saturn is completing this third trine with my sun placement, which has overall been good. You know, now that actually, interestingly enough, when Saturn went direct, things were kind of like I was feeling a lot of Saturn pressure when Saturn was retrograde, but as soon as he went direct, I was just like, so I could breathe a little bit more. But you know, what is your relationship with Saturn transits? How is your Saturn placement? You know, you can get a lot of information for that. And sometimes it's just kind of nice. I've just been really thinking about my Saturn placement in particular too. But yes, we love Saturn, at least in a day chart. Saturn's like he's the one that we can work more, the malefic that we can work more, because Saturn's the greater malefic that we can work more constructively with. Whereas in a night chart, Saturn's a little bit tough, a little bit trickier to work with in a night chart. So that's just something to pay attention to as well. But enough about Saturn. Let's get into the moon, because on the 11th of January, the moon's gonna enter into Cancer at about 8:24 p.m. and that's Pacific time. And we'll talk about the full moon here in a moment because I love when this full moon is falling. But when we talk about the moon, this is where the moon is at home, where she's dignified in her home sign of Cancer. because Cancer is the cardinal water sign, and the sign is feminine in nature, so there's a receptiveness. But Cancer's it's a very interesting place where Cancer falls, because you would think with the feminine there is this passivity there, but Cancer's still a cardinal sign, so they are the initiators. They're where the emotions first happen. When you get those first kind of psychic hits, those sort of things, those insights, and there's a nurturing effect that comes with Cancer, because we learn to work with the cycles of the moon. Being that the moon is the only sign that the moon, or that Cancer's the only sign that the moon rules. And there is that intimate relationship that with the fluctuations, and I find with Cancer, this is what's so important, whether you have Cancer placements or not. The importance of syncing up with the moon really helps us to just observe how we're tending to the body, how our emotions ebb and flow when she's in certain signs, in certain phases, and noticing themes in things, And it's a very intuitive energy when we're working with Cancer as well. Very empathic, very sensitive to the energies that are around them, like the water signs are. But yeah, this is just where the moon is doing. She's hot. Well, she's cool, but and I guess in this instance, but it's fine. But let's talk about this full moon here, because one thing is happening on a moon day. So it's like, how dope is that? It's going to be happening on the 13th of January, and it's going to be happening at about 2:27 p.m. And again, that's Pacific time. And it's going to be happening at 23 degrees and 9 minutes. Let me pull up my handy dandy drawer here. So you have the moon, and we're going to go ahead and circle Mars here, because the moon is applying to Mars. And that's why I said this may be kind of an action-packed one here. And then we have the sun here, that's in Capricorn. Now, the full moon is when the sun and the moon, as you see here, are in opposing signs to one another. And this happens, once a month. And this is that I like to think of, it's like when it's an opposition. And I like to think of the opposition as you had that new moon expectation, and then the opposition is the thing realized. It's come to fruition. It's reached a peak point. And this is just seeing how that intention has manifest for you. And I find that full moons are really great evaluation periods. This is either a time we're celebrating, or it's just like, okay, back to the drawing board. And I think that one thing to pay attention to, just kind of in general with this full moon, whatever happens to come, pay attention what comes up for you, especially on this moon day. Because I think that one way that I could see this translating as, because the reason that this is kind of iffy is because Mars in Cancer is where Mars finds his fall. And when a planet is in fall, it's where the planet has a tendency to dip more into its lower expressions. And Mars is retrograde on top of that. And so I would say pay attention to how the energies that you're absorbing around you. If there's a lot of people who may be throwing around like a foul mood or anything like that, it's not letting just people just disrespect you, but if someone's just like on one, it's just like, you know what? You can keep that. You can keep that right over there. I'm good. A lot of emotional responsibility with this, because even with this period here, I just want to talk about this a little bit. Venus is kind of coming in with Saturn. They're snuggling up here in Pisces, another fellow water sign here. And I feel like there's this, if we're not responsible with what we're attracting and with what we're moving, things will exacerbate. That's what I could see. But I also could see this as maybe being down on oneself. Maybe you haven't reached a place where, you had something that you wanted to accomplish. It didn't quite meet the goal. And now we're feeling just like we're beating ourselves up in a sense, being, maybe being really mean to yourself. So be mindful of those types of feelings coming up. But, just those martial feelings, because the Mars retrograde is exacerbated in Cancer, you know. But I also think that this can be one where be very intuitively guided with Mars. You know, when you know it takes a little bit extra work for Mars in Cancer, but I find with that support of the moon in Cancer, you can see maybe how you've been operating. If this, and I'm just speaking kind of in general now, if there's some ways that you've been behaving or maybe ways that you've noticed that you've been reacting that you don't particularly like, this could be a great time to get some eyes on that and to what are some steps that we can do to change that? How can we nurture in a new response to this? You know, develop some sort of mechanism to deal with this in a more or to express this in a healthier way, if that makes sense. Because one thing that I was kind of noticing too that I wanted to talk about with this chart here is that eventually these planets will be forming some aspects with the nodes as well, the north and the south node. And there's this opportunity here with that when we're talking with the South Node to notice some themes, to see where maybe you've done something. There was maybe some way, like maybe you were one to, if someone were to poke your buttons, maybe you would engage them, just be reactive. And now you're like, you know what? I'm tired of that trine to the North Node, and I'm going to go to a different direction. I'm blocking you. Straight up blocking you. No, we're not having a conversation. You know, that could be how something could manifest. Or yeah, just really kind of changing, doing some kind of course correction here is another way that I could see this kind of full moon or this lunation coming up here if we're working with these or when we're working with these planets more intentionally here. So that's just something to, I think, to pay attention to. Now, I wanted to talk about the Sabian symbol one, too, because I had a lot of thoughts on this one. This Sabian symbol for this moon is really fascinating because its phase is definitely not 84. I don't think I changed the numbers there. Hold on one moment. Let's see. I got my book right here. This is a wonderful book, by the way, an astrological mandala. If you look up 16 degrees of Cancer, me having this book is actually really appropriate because that's where my sun degree is. But let's talk about this lunation. It is phase 114 of Cancer, and it is a woman and two men are castaways on a small island in the South Seas. And the keynote for this is a focalization on complex inner potentialities and harmonic and concrete relationships. Now, when you even imagine that, like, even take the genders out of this for a moment. Just three people trapped on an island, you know, like castaway on an island. That's a lot going on. And I'm sure there's a lot of feelings that are coming up in everybody, but despite that, we still need to get something figured out. We're going to need to get shelter. We need to find food. We need to survey the land. And which one are we prioritizing? What's the game plan here? And to me, this is just it brings in how complex the human experience can be sometimes, because we're dealing with the representation of the woman who's supposed to represent the emotions, and then the men represent the spiritual mind and the mental mind. And it's like how bringing or trying to keep all of those things in harmony, where in theory sound pretty simple, but in practice is pretty complex. You know, especially when you get into the emotional aspect of it, because they are always changing and always fluctuating, like because the moon does that. And this to me is just like, how do we band together? You know, even we can even span this past three people. How do we all on this kind of castaway on this earth here from this grand space that's all around us? It's just like, how do we create this harmony and create concrete relationships with each other while we're going through, because there's a lot of wildness that's going on right now, and this is going to be a really action-packed year astrologically. And I mean, we're getting to a head here. And it's just like, how do we band together? How can we come together to make this transition more, just more pleasant? Not pleasant isn't quite the word, but just make it more. There's a word that's this right on the tip of my tongue. It'll come to me in a minute, but yeah, just we're all going through the same experience. So it's just like, how can we do better, show up in a different type of way, more constructive type of way here. And hold on one moment. Okay, but yes, a lot of feelings, when we're talking about with Cancer that may be coming up during this period of time. And I think we want to be too mindful too, just like projection, and just emotional, like I said, emotional responsibility. That those are some very, very important things that are really kind of coming up here, I think, during this lunation. And be mindful about being reactive, for sure. And if you wanted to work with these lunations more intentionally, here, let me start adjusting stuff a little bit. But if you want to work with them more intentionally, down in the description box below is a link for all the services that I provide. So if that's something that you feel that resonates with you, definitely check that out in the description box below. But let's go ahead and switch over. And then last little thing here, these readings that I do, they're not gender specific readings, so apply these energies to people as they make sense for situations. And before we jump into this thing, I'm going to ring this bell to bring in some good vibes, so adjust your volume if you need to, but let's get into this thing. All right. All right, let's see what your general energy is looking like. Interesting. I like this card. So you have the teacher card here, and this is a card of learning and about a new path. And I think with this happening with so closely with Mars intertwined in this full moon, I feel like that this is one, maybe letting the past be your teacher, especially if you find yourself maybe have been in a similar situation where maybe you tend to fight with this person all the time, or you find yourself in certain relationships all the time, or certain situations often, or something along those lines. Letting those situations be your teacher in order to create a new path here. The past has a lot of wisdom to provide, and I feel like that's where the moon really comes in as well with that. We learn through cycles. Everything's change often. And I think even just the moon is a great teacher, for just learning how to, because like I know that I try to be mindful of just like times around like Scorpio season, or just like when we're in like maybe heavy Scorpio energy, just because I have a lot of fixed placements, or even around like Taurus time or Aquarius time, that's where I have oppositions, or Capricorn's usually pretty light. And I will say, because this is only by my son that's really kind of being affected there, but those are the main sort of ones that like I personally keep an eye on. But it's from keeping track of the cycles, seeing the things that may have happened in the past that I was able to learn. I'd let that be my teacher, and then excuse me, and then in turn you become the teacher, and you be able to pass down your wisdoms to others as well here. But let's see what those, while we're talking about the past, let's see what's going on in the past. Let's get a card on this. Ooh! Ooh, yes, I love that. Got the Chariot. That's how we started off. Cancer was one of our cards. Our main card. And you know what? This Chariot, I love it. Let me get myself together. So, with the Chariot, the Chariot is thinking about the path, speaking of the direction that you've been going. This is how have we been moving? You know, be thinking about that. What have you learned from from this journey, that from this trip, this venture, chapter that maybe you've been on? I like that this book's here. This chapter that you've been on so far, and how have you enjoyed the journey? And what are some things that have been pleasant, and what are some things that are needing to shift? Like kind of taking in the whole kind of thing, you know. I like that there's this black and white horse here. It's not like just taking just one thing or the other, not just taking the good, you know, the bad and the, or not just taking just the good or just the bad, but weighing them both equally and seeing what we got from that, maybe not equally, but just weighing them both into the equation. And this to me, it's like if we're ready to change a trajectory, ready to, you know, move in a different direction, you absolutely can. But I think you have to look to see where you've been. It may be, and that might be another thing too to kind of call upon that as well. Let me get a clarifier with the Chariot. Interesting. Spirit. All right, so you have the Princess of Swords here. And the Princess of Swords, this is giving me a thinking about maybe you needed to go a certain direction here. And this is only if things haven't been going very well. This is like, you know, maybe there's this feeling of feeling stuck, of feeling trapped, or maybe feel like a route was like predetermined for you or something like along those lines. You don't have any sort of say in this type of thing. And I think that there may be a lot of mental stuff that's coming through with this, with the Princess of Swords here. And she's an interesting one. The princesses, they're the earthy part of the elements, and she's the earthy part of air. And so there's a lot of she just has this very natural kind of contradiction to her, because those air and earth, those opposite elements. And to me, that would manifest like the earthy part of air. That would be like the debris and stuff that the air whips up, or like even like the sand and things, the things that like obscure the view and that maybe keeps things from being clear. And maybe that's something too. There's something about a clarity here, about not sure where things are going, wanting the new path, but not sure where that's going to take you and whether that's going to be the quote unquote kind of right choice. But I don't think it's necessarily about making whether a choice is right or not per se. It's making the choice that resonates, and then making the most of it. But let's see what's happening in the present. Okay. Spirit. So you have the Ten of Wands in reverse here. And this gives me, you know, we're kind of at like this end of the line here. And it's just like there's a need to kind of lighten the load or something like that. It's like you're like right towards the end of something, or right on the it almost gives me like this, almost like a fear of maybe just like not sure what new thing maybe you're getting ready to take on, possibly in the present. You know, there's that need, like I said, there's an interest about movement here, but it's just like, is this going to be, am I learning, or am I getting ready to get into a whole other type of situation, is what this maybe there's an apprehension that's even kind of coming here with this Ten of Wands. And I even think that it's the the challenge maybe of it's like, how do you keep the energy going when or create this new path, maybe even when the circumstances don't seem to line up here, or maybe it doesn't feel like it's. Let me get a clarifier with that one. Spirit. Ooh, look at that. So you have the star card here, Aquarius energy. In this star card, this is, and that's kind of like what I was thinking, like, how do you keep the hope and how do you keep the faith going towards this direction? You know, you're following this star, but it can seem like when you're focusing on this one star and it's surrounded by all this darkness, all this, things again feel kind of obscure. How do you keep that focus on that thing? But this also gives me, I mean, it gives me, the star card is a nice card. This gives me the sense of hope that, like, if you feel like there's, it gives me like there's more options, I think, than, not quite that. Oh, you know what? This kind of goes back to maybe that complex inner potentialities, I think, of the Sabian symbol. There we go. It gives me this, you have the hope, and it's staying fixated, but there's just so much inner things that are going on. There's the trusting in the spirit, and the emotions are just doing emotion things, and then the mental's trying to balance everything's trying to balance one another out, and it has become this sort of maybe dance, but I think that there's a way to reconcile that, and again, to bring those things in harmony, and just trusting yourself that this new path is going to, yeah, there may be some, like with all decisions and things, there are new, when you make new decisions and new things, there are new potentialities that come up, but if it's, we're working towards the goal, we're aiming towards our highest vibration, we're doing that good work, it all comes to in the end. It may be the question, just thinking with Aquarius being ruled by Saturn, it's just like when will it come to fruition? And let's find out. Let's see what's going on with the future. Let's see how that's looking. Let's see what let's put it like this. Let's see what one potentiality is. Oh, look at that. It's good, girl. Thanks, Spirit. Got the Queen of Pentacles. I love the Queen of Pentacles. Because she's the one that's, one of the cards under her deck and rulership is the Ten of Wands. This could be like her, I like to think of this as like her moon placement. She rules the first two decans of Capricorn and the last of Sagittarius. And, the Queen of Wands, or excuse me, the Queen of Pentacles, she's a resourceful one. No matter what the path is, she sees the signs, she knows what she needs, and we're just going with it. We're gonna figure it out. We're sitting calm. She got a hand on. I really enjoy this Queen of Pentacles. She's very, very, very grounded, and I feel like you'll be proud of the work that you've done, but it is going to be work. And there's going to be fluctuation that's going to be happening, the need for adjustment and things along the way, of course, maybe not working under the most ideal situations. But I find that if you're able to work when the situations are not great, when the situations are prime, then you'll know how to really milk the most out of that. You'll get even extra bang for your buck. It always balances out. But let's get a clarifier for her. Thanks, Spirit. Ooh, look at that. Got the Hierophant. And this to me, I'm getting a thing of just like go keep it structured, go by the plan, kind of follow the course, but not just some, some sort of like laid out course. This is following your path. And it's like when I get the Hierophant, this to me is sometimes it's like a returning just to your roots in a sense, getting back in touch with source. And this could be like engaging in prayer. Maybe you need to go to like a religious place, like go to a church, go to a mosque, a synagogue, whatever that might look like for you, go up in the mountains. But any sort of place that has that like a grounded structure that maybe represents that place, so maybe you can hear something that gets you closer to the stars, maybe in a sense. But the Hierophant, that's Taurus. It's where the moon's exalted, and I love that both her home sign and her exaltation are out here. But I also think too, with this Hierophant being here, that there could be, since we're talking about, we got this teacher card here, that maybe there's someone that maybe in the future that's going to provide some help, that can maybe you can learn, get some wisdom from, as far as like what could the next steps look like for you. So that might be another thing that's coming up here as well. So a little something to consider. But let's go ahead and get some advice from Luna. Spirit. Okay. So you have the Nine of Swords in reverse. And to me, this is not, the advice would be to try to not fret, to not be where you're, to get where because this is Mars and Gemini. And I think that again, whatever choice that you make, yeah, it's going to lead to a new change, and whatever that may mean for you. But I don't think it's necessarily. It's just like, and I don't. When I say it's like it's making the most of the choices that you make, it's not like necessarily a settling. But sometimes I think if we overthink things, then we don't take any steps. And I feel like this is an invitation is not to doubt yourself in these situations, like that you're not going to be able to figure things out as you go. And then again, it's not to say that it's going to be easy, but I think that you would surprise yourself, But let's get a clarifier on that. Spirit. So you got the Five of Disc here. And let's go ahead and switch back over. Because Five of Discs, the Lord of Worry. And, it's Mercury in Taurus. We're thinking a lot. Hold on. One more. But we're thinking a lot. Maybe if there's maybe some anxieties coming up here with this worry card. And I think this coming here on the Nine of Swords is just like the moon knows. It's just like, I get it, but this is if Because I think if we were to like just if you try to weigh out all the potential things that would happen, we would get nowhere. Because there are numerous ways that this can go great, and there's numerous ways that this can go just sideways. And I say, like, it's like, why worry about it? And I say that in a sense of not to just discard things, to keep in mind, when you're making these new paths, what are going to be the great things, and yeah, what may be some potential pitfalls with what this means. Like, this is like, okay, if I'm going to move out of my parents' place, for example, like, yeah, that's great. I have this new freedom and all these things, but I also lose that security that's already been established. And now I have to build my own sense of things. Like, do I have the income to bring into these things? How am I going to get around to get all the things that I need? There are new questions that happen that come with that new sense of freedom. So it's like, what do you want more? And that's where I think that it kind of comes to right at. And not to be cruel to yourself if you don't maybe feel ready to make a move yet. But then I think it gives a question to invitation of why don't you feel like you're ready to move yet? And what are some things that you could work on to get to the place if this is something that you really feel is what's calling to you? Yeah, what you can do to get into that place so that you can make those steps. So just some things to meditate on there. But if you like that, if anything resonated with you, give it a thumbs up. And share this thing if you know somebody who would get some nuggets of wisdom from this. And then subscribe there, you chariot. Hit that bell. Love that happened. Hit that bell button to get notified on all these videos each day. And then I'm going to get your surprise card here while I'm tell you this little last part. But if you want to know what is going on with the other celestial bodies, down in the description box below is also a link for my other channel, Alchemist 8, where I do weekly videos talking about the celestial transits. And I've been, like I said, there's been some, Saturn's been working in my chart, Mars is back in Cancer working in my chart, and I've been meaning to get back to the planetary placement videos for a little bit, but I also do those as well, and I'll be making some new videos out here shortly. I actually got a Mars one that I'm going to be doing next, looking at you, Mars and Cancer, interestingly enough. So, but all that housekeeping is down in the description box below. Let's see what's going on with your excuse me if I can speak, your surprise card here. And you have the devotion card. Excuse me. Now, when I think about devotion, the things that I'm devoted to those are kind of like, I feel like very sacred things that are coming up when I think about that. When I I want to do this thing, I want to change this situation, I want to give my all to this thing. I'm really just like giving just everything towards this next move, whatever that might be, this new path. And I think that I'm getting like there's an invitation of like, again, be kind to yourself, like, and try not to put maybe too much pressure, maybe even on yourself. That might be something that's kind of coming up here. But following the course, following your course. Start off with the Chariot. You may be driving through a sandstorm right now. Whatever that might be looking like. The visibility is questionable at the moment. But once things clear, I think if nothing else, you'll definitely learn something. But I think that's all I got for you there. So until next time, keep eyes on that moon. Keep raising the vibration through the roof. And I will catch you on the next one. Mars Day. I gotta start giving Mars so much flack.